Well, hello, and welcome back. Today we're going to be adding a remote to our blog so that we can back up the Git. Oh, whoops, got myself double going there. If you are watching this live right now, if you want to leave a comment or question, head on over to YouTube for the chat. And if you are not watching this live, take a look in the description for the Beyond Code Bootcamp playlist where you might find the edited version of this video if we have any technical difficulties in between or anything that needs to get shortened. Okay, with that out of the way, I will go ahead and get started. Well, hello, and welcome back. Tonight, we're going to go over how to take our Git database that we have for our blog, our little Git setup, and have it backed up on our server so that when we commit our code, we can push it so that we have a copy safe with us on our local computer as well as a copy safe on our server. This is the same process that happens with GitHub, but we're going to peel back the curtain just a little bit so you can see where the magic happens. And as well, we're also going to be creating a little deploy script, kind of our own mini CI/CD, if you've heard that term, so that every time we commit to our local repository, our blog gets built and pushed out to our website. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring up our blog just for good measure, and as always, I highly recommend that you head on over to gist.github.com so that you can take notes. A lot of the commands that we're going to be using are already in the description ahead of time, but I would recommend that you go to gist.github.com, open up your notes section, add another page, and then pretty soon we'll be able to transition this to be the blog because we're building out of Markdown and out of using Git. So we'll be able to get everything connected pretty soon here. Not in this video, but in the future. Okay, so I'm in the blog. In the last episode or session that we had, we added dates to the blog. And now, using some of the git log commands, and now what we want to do is first, we're going to log into our server. So hopefully you have your server set up. If not, you can check in the playlist for how we did that, got the domain and set up the server. I'm going to log into the server. And as I always recommend, we're going to run screen X marks the spot, arg, sail away, awesome, XRS. Oh, and I've still got something up there. I actually don't want this up. We're going to get out of that. And what we need to do, so we're on our server so that we can create a place for our Git database to live on the server. And what I'm going to do is I like to put everything in the SRV directory that's service related, as you may have noticed. So we're going to have SRV, and I'm going to do repos, and then I'm going to do beyondcode.duckdns.org.git. It is customary that anytime that you are creating a backup of a Git database, this is exactly what Git does, that it ends in .git. You'll notice that the GitHub URLs and Git and GitLab and all of the other Git platforms, their URLs end in .git, and that is because it actually represents a folder that actually sits on a hard drive that ends in .git. So you'll see exactly how these URLs work. It's going to be very disappointing to find out just how simple it really is. So we're going to do git init just like we did before, but we're going to do --bear. So I'm inside of that directory on our server. I'm doing git init --bear, and this just created an initial empty database. And that, for right now, is all that we need to do on the server. So I am actually going to log out of the server. Let me clear my screen here again. I exited out of the screen, and I want to exit out of, there we go, the server. Okay, so now I killed all the previous screen sessions that I had open, exited out of them, and exit out of the server. And now we're going to do Git Remote add, and we use the same thing that we use for SSH. So I'm going to do origin is the customary default name for the remote that you're pushing your Git backups to, or where you're sharing your Git with other people. Oh, I didn't mean to hit tab there. And so we're going to use the same username and server name and directory path that we have on our server. So when I log into my server, it's app at beyondcode.duckdns.org, colon. So just the same as if we were going to use rsync. So :/srv repos beyondcode.duckdns.org.git. That's it. So I'm literally just adding the path to where SSH that's on our server is going to accept the connection with these credentials, app at the server name, and then the Git repository is going to be synced in this directory. That's where the Git database lives. So when I hit enter here, now I can do git push, but because this is the very first time I'm doing this, I need to put -u, which means set upstream. It's also, I could put it out in long form, set upstream, but I just like to put u because it's short. And then origin, which is what I just added. I just added the origin for this repository, meaning a server. We can have multiple servers that we can connect to. Typically, when you clone something from GitHub, GitHub is automatically the origin. We just set an origin all on our own. It's just a server SSH path or SSH credentials, and then a path on the file system. That's all it is. So we're going to push to that origin, and we're going to push the master branch, which is our default branch. So once I do this, now we have a backup on that server. And I could do one better. I could do git push origin --all. And now I actually had another branch I was working on in your absence. It pushes that and any of the additional commits that are in the Git history as well. And there's one more thing that we could do. We haven't talked about tags yet, but I'll just mention this briefly. No big deal here. If you have Git tags, tags are kind of like branches, but they're just a one-time use for a specific revision. Anyway, I don't want to get into details on that, but just in case you are familiar with tags, we can push tags as well. So I won't go into that any further, just for those of you that have been wondering about that, now you know. So now that we have our backup there, and let's go ahead and log into the server and let's just see. Actually, before I log into the server, let me exit out again, clear my screen. So if we look into our Git folder, this is where the Git database is. We can see all this bunch of stuff here is in the .git folder. Now if we log into our server, and then we list the serve repos beyond code.git directory, notice how similar they look. It's a direct replica. The two databases are direct replicas at this point. So if my server burns down, thank goodness I still have my laptop with all of my code on it. And if the server gets run over by a bus, it's no big deal because I've got my local copy. And if my laptop gets stolen, it's okay because my server probably didn't burn down. Okay, so with that, now we are ready to create our deploy script. So what we've been doing is we've had this build script that we created that at this point is definitely approaching the maximum complexity of what we'd want to do in Bash, but as an exercise, this has been pretty cool. And if our Git status is clean, then we can run bash build, and it'll build our articles with the dates and everything. So let's go back to where the website is actually being built. Mine's beyondcode.duckdns.org. So we can see the dates are there, and we've got the articles, and we can go into the article and we can see everything formatted very nicely with our GitHub CSS that we found. So we just want to make it so that every time we commit a new article, it just automatically appears there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in my rsync history. So I'm typing out rsync. I'm going to hit up a couple of times to see if I can find, here we are. So this is the command that we ran last time. So you can just, if you're using fish, like I showed you, you can just go back up in your history. You just type a little bit, everything's in your history. You just hit up and you can cycle through to one of the recent results. So we're going to look at this, but I'm going to copy it out into a file called deploy.sh. And like every bash file, I'm going to start it with #bang bin bash so that anything that's looking at this file knows that it is a bash script, and set-e for turning on errors in bash so that it doesn't do the default of ignoring errors and continuing to run, which could be dangerous, and set-u, which makes sure that we don't have any typos in our variable names either. So every bash file should start with these 3 lines. Okay, and then what we want to do in this bash file is we're going to call the other bash file that we wrote. So we're going to call bash build.sh. I like to be explicit with putting the current directory in front just so that's more clear. And then we're going to call rsync with our standard flags. The current directory, we're going to make a little bit of a change here to make this a little nicer. We're actually going to put our files in a public directory. I'll leave this out for now, just so we can focus on the task at hand. I'll leave that out. So we're going to rsync, and this is not, notice this is not into the repos folder, this is into our web server folder. So serve www, but look how similar that is. Our rsync command that's using SSH and our git command that's using SSH, they're practically identical, except that rsync is giving a folder name where built files are going to go, and Git is using the folder name where we have a copy of the database. But the syntax, the way that this looks, is the same. And it's also extremely similar to what you type into your web browser. So just wanted to point that out real quick. So here, this is just our normal rsync command, avhP, alien versus predator with an H for good measure, which means we're going to copy everything. We're going to list all the files that we copy. It's going to be human readable. So all verbose, human readable, and then P for progress. It's going to show a progress bar. We don't need that for these small files, but we like that to be there. And that's it. This is going to be our deploy script. So one thing that we haven't done before, because every time we run bash, I just tell you, okay, you're going to run bash and then give it the name of the script. Well, this time we're going to do something a little bit different. So let me go ahead and cancel that, or not cancel, but clear that out. This time, we're going to make the script executable. And this is done with the command chmod, and this is in the description. So chmod a+x, and then we give it deploy.sh. And what this means is normally if I were to type /, let's say I did it with build. Build we have not made executable. We've not told the system to explicitly treat it as a program automatically. So you can see I've got a build.sh here, but if I type this out as a command that I'm going to run, it's red, letting me know it's not going to run. And why is it not going to run? It's not executable. So this is just a Linux Mac permission thing, just the way things are historically. There is a special property, just like a file is owned by a user and can be readable or writable in Unix systems, it can be executable. And so we set that bit with chmod, which means that with our deploy script, we can do // and then just give the name, and it will know that it can run it. So there it goes, and it's running it. So what we want to do is make it so that every time we commit, we copy over, or we run this deploy script. So all we have to do for that is I'm just going to make a copy of the deploy script. So here's our deploy.sh, and I'm going to put it in a special place in our Git folder. This isn't part of the database, but this is part of what's called Git hooks. So I'm going to copy this into .git/hooks, and there's a special name. This is not arbitrary. This is a name that's predefined. It's in the Git documentation for Git hooks. It's called post commit. So that deploy.sh, I've made a copy of it. So if I edit the deploy.sh, I'll want to copy it back into my Git hooks again. But that is now set so that whenever there is a commit to the repository, it's going to deploy that to our website. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a directory called hooks, and I am actually going to move the deploy.sh into hooks, and I'm going to git add it. Okay, so we look at that, and this is just so that I can keep a copy of this because, like I said, the hooks folder is not part of the database. It just tells Git when the database changes in certain ways, such as getting a commit or receiving a new push or a merge or any of these type of events that are registered, it tells it, here's what you should do when that event happens. So right now, we're going to have this deploy script run on our local computer. In the future, we'll set it up so that it actually, whenever we push to the server itself will deploy. But I wanted to keep this a little bit more contained for right now, so we're just going to do it locally. So I'm going to commit this and say add git post commit hook. Maybe it would be better to say backup of git post commit hook. There we go. So with that, we actually, you noticed when I did that commit, it ran the hook just like it was supposed to. So I did a commit and then it ran the build and deployed it. So one thing that we want to change here, two things actually. One, we want to actually be able to see that this was real, this is happening. So I'm going to create a new article in our source directory, and we're going to call it masteringgit.md. And then I'm just going to put in here some things that we've talked about. So we can do a Git Remote add name of nickname. This is the nickname of server, domain name, and path to Git repo. Oh, I don't know if I said this explicitly, but when people generally don't say Git database, they typically say Git repository, and for short, that's repo. So Git repo means Git database. So domain name and path to Git repo. So we could even put a little example here. I like to do it like this. So we might add origin, and then we have, I'll use a more typical example, say git at github.com/my/org/my-project.git, for example. That's one way that we would do that. And I'm not going to go into more details of what this blog post actually should be right now, although I do actually intend to use this as the Beyond Code blog as we're developing this. I do plan to backfill those and have these articles be relevant and useful in the near-term future, not too far off. Okay, so anyway, we created a new blog article. We added it to Git. We check the status. We can see that there's the right thing there. And you'll notice I always do git status. And there's a purpose for this. It is so easy to accidentally add junk files, or much worse, configuration files that might have secrets, tokens, API keys that have access to things that would cost you money. And I guarantee you, and I'm not exaggerating with this at all, if you ever commit something publicly to GitHub that has an API key in it for a popular service, AWS, Mailgun, SendGrid, MailChimp, Twilio, any of those, within minutes, bots that are watching for names that match that will grab that key and start spending your money. So to me, it's super important from a security perspective to always do a git status before I do a git commit, because that way, because you'll see a lot of people, you notice I don't do what you'll see a lot of other people teach you. I don't just do a blanket git add everything. I git add a specific folder or a specific file or a list of folders and files, and then I do a git status to make sure. And if I find something that shouldn't be there, just like I showed you last time, I edit my .gitignore. And I'll add something in so that I'm not committing junk files to the repository, especially not, say, editor config files like for VS Code or for Vim or one of the other editors. People often commit those by mistake. There are I won't go into it. I'm getting down the rabbit hole. But anyway, git status is important to me. Then I do a git commit, and we'll say add mastering git article. Here we go. So boom, pushes. And now if we refresh, look at that. We have, where did it go? Oh, I remember this. when we were off camera, I discovered there was actually a small bug in our build script. Let me fix that real quick. So it is actually showing one less. It has a typical off by one error. So in my printf, I forgot to put an ending new line. And so when the while read loop executes, it didn't get the very last string representing the file name because it didn't see a new line, so it didn't know that the string is finished, and it just stopped and skipped it. I think that's what the bug was. So if you noticed that from last time, that's where it was. I think we're going to see that right now. Give me just a second. Okay, mastering Git, cool. So what I'm going to do is a Git reset. I'm going to do head -1, meaning I'm just going to undo the last change. Oops, let me look into this. Back up. Okay, good. So I'm going to add this again, and I'm going to say bug fix typo in build script. Okay. And then I'm going to add this here, and I'm going to say add mastering Git. Okay, cool. Now it ran like it should have run, and now we have our latest article right down here at the bottom, which also makes me wonder if let's see, I think it's doing timestamps based on, yeah, okay. So we are doing chronological timestamps. I might want to change that to be a reverse timestamp so that most recent articles show up at the top. But anyway, so we see that that's working. Every time I commit a new article, boom, automatically my blog is updated. Like I said, in the future, we'll change it so that every time, instead of every time we add locally, every time we push. That way, whether I'm adding an article from my work computer, or I'm adding it from my home computer, or I'm working on a project with a friend where we're all contributing to the website or the blog, every time we push, it'll get deployed. So we'll go over that in a future video. Oh, it looks like there's another thing that I did a little bit of work between the last video and now, and I tried to revert it all so that we were at the same place as I was playing around, preparing for how we were going to move forward. But there's a couple of bits that, like this created at, that's supposed to be the date for the blog. Okay, it's showing up correctly there, so that's fine. Yeah, there's a couple of things that rabbit holes I decided not to go down this time. But anyway, I think, let me check my notes here, but I think we covered everything that was important. So we talked about, we SSH'd into the server, we created the Git repository, we added that as a remote called origin, we pushed to it and set the upstream, we created our deploy script, we copied it into a Git hook, that's it. That's all we got for tonight. So I hope that was helpful for you. If it was, at any point you had one of those ahas, go ahead and give this a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want more like this. There's the live channel and there's the edited playlist. You can check those out in the description. And don't forget, if you want to follow along with each bit in the series as we go, make sure to hit the bell on that and select the all so that you actually get what you want. Now, you may want to pick personalized instead, because I do other videos other than just these. But anyway, just that subscribe feature, you can check the bell or click the bell if you want to. And with that, again, I hope that this was helpful. If it was, give me a little love. Leave a comment in the description. Let me know what was the best part of this, what was the worst part of this, and any questions that you might have, either leave in a comment or tweet me @_beyondcode.